Welcome back to another episode. Just another friendly reminder to please like, comment, and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. We're doing everything we can to try to grow this page as large as possible. But yeah, we'll go ahead and dive in. It is June 24th. We are, less than 24 hours away from the 2025 NBA draft. Um, luckily, luckily, unluckily, our Detroit Pistons, they don't have a draft pick in the first round, but it's also not going to be the fifth overall pick. It's not going to be a lottery pick just due to the success that they'd had as a team this year. So it's exciting in a sense to where, you're kind of going into this draft, not a whole lot of pressure. You're just looking to add to the team, in a sense, instead of, potentially drafting like a team savior per se. So we'll touch on today. Trajan Langdon, he actually had a press conference about an hour ago, 2 hours ago, where he talked about the direction of the team. So I'll go ahead and pull that up, just kind of read off of that. We'll talk through that for a hot second, and then we both have some players that we've looked at as far as what we'd like to see at our 37th draft pick that actually won't be picked until Thursday as well. So kind of kick things off here. I'm just going to throw out a couple nuggets from Trajan's press conference. And overall, he said he's not going to be doesn't plan on making an immediate splash this offseason. He's aiming to draft the best player available over a need, taking a page out of Brad Holmes' book there. And then Trajan also said that he's looking to keep internal growth as top priority for the Pistons. He's not going to rule out upgrading in the margins, which I think we've talked about quite a bit overall when it comes to making some changes to this team. But that being said, E, I'll kick it over to you and just kind of see your thoughts on the comments that Trajan made in the press conference as we go into the draft here the next 24 to 48 hours.
No, for sure. Look at us with hot off the press Trajan Langdon talk. No, I am no, I guess I'm a second what you said as far as the draft. It sucks and doesn't suck that we don't have that pick, but I would take the success we had over the idea of us, getting
Yeah.
who would be, because we had that pick, we'd be sitting around talking about can Ace Bailey fall to us? Would be so it I'm glad that we're not in that boat anymore. One of the questions I wrote down was we were prepping for this before we heard what Trajan Langdon said was, are we going to take the best available, or are we going to look to try to fill a need? And obviously, we know how them even early second round picks are. They're very seldomly are they real needle movers. Very seldomly do they have heavy minutes. So you really have to kind of know what you're looking for in order to find a guy who's going to come out and be a top 8-man rotation out the gate, top 10-man rotation out the gate. So I like what he had to say as far as that goes. So I think we both agreed that we'll enter this kind of mock draft for who we think, with the idea of everybody that was on the roster this year or last year is going to be re-signed. So it's going to be the same unit, and how would we improve that unit? So that being said, I mean, can you name a better 1 year turnaround from sitting there about this time last year when we were at the abyss of the ocean as far as where we were as a fan base, as a team? Were we going to buy out I don't even think we had a coach entering the draft, if I'm not mistaken. We didn't have a coach entering the draft. The owner had just gave Monty Williams like $80 million to go away. In 2 seasons, we won like a combined 30 games, 28 games. So I think all of that compared to taking the Knicks to the ropes, getting cheated out of a couple of games there, and having an all NBA player in Cade, I think all of that is positive signs. And I completely agree with him as far as doubling down on what we have and watching
Yeah.
the players develop another notch. That from Cade to Ivy, Duran, uh, Isaiah Stewart, Sar Thompson, every one of them guys still have, especially everybody other than Duran or other than uh, uh, damn, I'm blanking on his name. Isaiah Stewart has a lot of probably room still to grow in what they can do and what they can become. Now he
For
has a
sure.
little some moves he can do to try to improve upon himself as well, but he kind of is who he is, which is a great player in what we need him to do also.
Hmm.
So I don't know, not sure if you want to jump right into who we think or how you want to kind of go about this, but overall, I second and I agree with what he said as far as that goes. And I think I'm not gonna sit here and say any of the guys I wrote down necessarily are going to be a guy that can push us to the championship this year, but I think what I'm looking for is good rotational piece, and a guy that maybe in a year or two we feel okay about letting Isaiah Stewart go. We feel okay about letting Fontecchio go or somebody like that. That's kind of how I would. That's kind of how I'm approaching this, and then maybe two and a half. Let's call it 2 years from now, they could be replace somebody that's currently on the roster as far as their minutes, and we can
Right.
cut the fat off as far as, hey, we don't have to pay X player, $20 million a year. We drafted so and so back in 2025.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think just a quick add in because you hit it right on the head, and we talk about this already a lot, to where it's just like we just owe it to ourselves, and they owe it to themselves as a franchise. And I think as fans, I think you know, get on Twitter, you want to see people getting moved for 4, 5, 7, 8 picks, and you think everybody's getting better than your team just because they didn't do that type of stuff. Like, I think we're literally a player to upgrade, away from, at minimum being in the second round and then maybe getting into that conference final. So, I trust. I mean, the way that he turned this around so quick, I ain't got no reason to not trust Trajan and what he's trying to do. I do think I'm confident that he is going to try to improve, within the margins, whether it's getting a Bobby Portis, maybe a Nas Reed. There's some other, I'm sure there's some other vets out there that we could use to upgrade, like upgrade like a Fontecchio, from a Fontecchio, something along those lines, or maybe even from like a Marcus Sasser, whatever that looks like, overall, to where I don't want him to be mortgaging the farm or anything, or sending a lot of players off just to try to think that we were within earshot of, winning an NBA championship. Because I don't think we're there quite yet, but I do think with the players we have now, we can definitely be there within the next 1 to 2 years. And also adding that there's a possibility that Devin Booker might walk right into our hands in 2027, 2028. But I digress. But yeah, I think I trust what he's doing, like where we're at. And I think, we can kind of just go ahead and shift gears here and kind of talk about, some of the players in the draft that, like I said, by no means, we don't think these guys will, get us over the hump or anything along those lines. But this can be a player that we can plug in, not have to pay a ton over the next few years, and let a certain player walk, over the next couple years. If we do, draft somebody that can come in and make an impact in the next year or two. So, um, yeah, I'll go ahead and just run through, a few players, that I have personally. I think to just kind of summarize in a nutshell. I was really looking at, two or three guard, or, a two guard, kind of like a combo guard, some wings, but I say overall, or some wings and a big, but I say overall, guys that can shoot the basketball. I think it's just paramount that we keep spacing, as good as possible. We saw what Cade did with some spacing last year, opposed to when he didn't have spacing years prior. So I think that's really, like, for me, at the forefront, spacing, and then, just bulking up, the bigs, as far as just having a guy that you can pair with Isaiah Stewart on the floor, you can pair with Duran on the floor, maybe upgrading from a Paul Reed, who's solid, solid player, solid veteran, but I think we can definitely improve, that position overall. So I'll run through my guys real quick. First guy being Kobe Brea. I mean, 6'6", 175, played guard for Kentucky. Had 4 years at Dayton prior to, transfer to Kentucky. And also, I'll pretty much say I'll say what I was hearing as far as Kentucky, or the SEC being one of the best basketball conferences in college basketball last year. I think first thing that came out to me, shot 43% from three last year. And this wasn't like, hugging that line. I mean, these are some NBA type threes that he was shooting and hitting. So I think that'd be a good addition. After that, I think a guy, Chaz Lanier, 6'4" guard from Tennessee. Also spent, he spent 4 years at a mid-major, North Florida, came to Tennessee his senior year, shot the ball 40%, average 18 points a game. I think he had, yeah, I think that'd be somebody we could really plug in and play to be able to hit, open shots when we need them, and kind of continue to keep that floor spaced out as much as possible for Cade. Another guy, his name is Micah Peavy, 6'7", 215-pound guard. Georgetown, also played at Texas Tech and TCU prior to going to Georgetown. Averaged 17 a game. His three-point percentage was 40%, right on the nose. This guy that can also get his shot, off the dribble here and there a little bit more than what I saw from, Brea and Lanier. And then we have a guy that I feel like might be a little bit more on the project side, but I think he'd be a good addition. Kobe Sanders. He played at Nevada this previous year, but was at Cal Poly out of the Big West 4 years prior. 4 years prior, um, he shot the ball, around from three, 34%. But I think he's kind of a guy that might be kind of like a Cade clone per
Yeah.
se. Bigger guard. He averaged about 4.5, 5 assists a game, 15 points a game. Was able to do a lot of different things really well. Was able to rebound the basketball decently. And then last but not least, this is a guy
Wait, was that
that,
the guy video you sent me on Twitter?
yeah,
Yeah, no, I did like his game a lot. He did
yeah,
that reminded me of Kate. If you swap the jerseys out, he tall, lanky
hmm
guard, getting to a spot whenever he wanted to. I agree with you. I did like his game a lot.
yeah. So I think he
Sorry.
might. No, you're good. Yeah, I think he'd be like a good like project. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Sitting behind K, maybe be in the G League for a little bit. But I don't know. It kind of depends on where we're at with. Do we want a project? Do we want a guy, kind of on the older side that can come in and a little bit more established, a little bit more seniored, as some of the other guys I mentioned prior to him. Even though he's in college for about 5 years as well himself. But last person I have before handing over to you is Ryan Kalkbrenner. I mean, this is a guy that played for Creighton, four-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year. They always felt like they were just balling out, Sweet 16, Elite Eight. Anytime they're in the tournament, he was usually the one kind of carrying them through. 19 points a game. He averaged 3 blocks a game. He also shot the three ball, being 7 foot at 35%. And I think that's the one thing we're missing with that new NBA is just a big that can really stretch the
Yeah,
floor. He kind of I could see him, really, like a pick and pop kind of guy to where, Stewart's kind of trying to mold into that. Duran's really a pick and roll kind of guy, but I think Kalkbrenner might be a guy that you can pair with Stewart and Duran on the floor at any given time just to give us a touch more versatility overall. But I think any of these guys could really come in and give us some serviceable minutes going forward this upcoming season.
yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And it's with the background that we said, as far as we're not looking to make the biggest splash and kind of it sounds like what they're looking to do is really the OKC method, develop what we have and make strategic moves along there. And I think that will fall
Hmm
right on with what you're saying. Get good guys in here, experience. Every player you mentioned pretty much is not no, hey, this guy was a top three high school player last year and he didn't do well at Kansas. Now he's in it, we could get him and turn him into something. These are
Right.
commodities guys who've played in many different I mean, every guy you probably named has over 100 career college
Yep.
basketball under their belt. And
Yep.
I think that is I think that is kind of where the league is going a little bit, where people are shying away from, the Monty Bates types, where hey, if he falls to us, we're getting him no matter what. So I agree with you on that as far as just leaning into the experience and leaning into guys who can stretch the floor. When in doubt, can they shoot? And you like you mentioned, you've seen how much Cade with the spacing around him is just a maestro with the basketball. He'll make the right decision,
hmm
get it over to Tim. He'll get it over to Beasley. He'll take it to the rack if both of them are covered. So more of that is going to work. So
Yep.
I agree with you on that. And the one thing I would say from the list you mentioned, I would probably say the Chaz Lanier guy stands out to me the most. Um, you sent him over a couple days ago, and I just wrote a little note about him. 123 threes this season and 276 for his career in
Yeah.
college.
Letting it
That
fly.
yeah, that's a guy that can get baskets, get buckets, and just like you said, double down on what works. We spread the floor out with shooters. We got into the playoffs. The year before, they had me and you out there trying to shoot threes. We won 14 games. It was kind of, it's night and day. They
Yeah.
we probably on it might have one of us might have did better if we than Killian if we were out there that much. But that's a whole nother point. But no, so I'll do mine, and this is not in any particular order of how I think we should go about them, just how I happen to write them down.
hmm
But I'll give you the player that I like, followed up by if everything works out, who they can potentially replace.
Okay.
So I have Tyrese Proctor, Duke kid. I believe he's a junior or senior on the Final Four team this year. 41% from three. He's 6'6". Kind of a combo guard. He could run some point if you need him. He could play off ball if you want. He had 89 threes this season, and he has 198 for his career,
Mm,
194 for his career. And I think that's in 3 seasons.
okay.
Uh, Obviously, he's been in some big time games. What stood out to
Yeah.
me the most was I couldn't tell you which game it was, but he kept them alive in one of them tournament games this year, just draining threes, draining threes. And not just necessarily a spot up shooter guy. He had a lot of spot up shooting, but you go back and watch that highlight tape. He was getting the ball on the pick and roll, stepping back on people. He was pretty handy with the ball in his hand. So that's a guy that I think can replace Marcus Sasser, who um obviously I think he's had moments on our team where you look at that and say, hey, that could be our backup point guard. And then you see
Hmm.
that you get Dennis Schroeder, and you've seen just how much we really needed a backup point guard. You see
Yeah.
just how his minutes soaked up from maybe 15, 17 a game to
Good point.
I couldn't tell you the last time I seen him. So it's kind of a make or break year for him whether he has a spot on this squad or not. I'm not saying he's not an NBA player. I'm saying I don't know if he's has a spot with how our roster is developing. And somebody like that I think could potentially nudge him out. Next guy, I'm gonna go Broom from Auburn. Kind of in line with what you're saying. Guy who's been around. Uh, I forgot, I had it wrote down, but I forgot. Oh, I have it pulled up here. Played a lot of college basketball. He has 168 career college basketball games.
Ooh.
So,
Yeah.
uh, never scored under 14 a game going back to his freshman year, and then he peaked that right at 19. He had 19 and 11 this year.
So
28% from three. So not the greatest at three, but 19, 11, and 3 assists. So I
yeah.
think you going to watch him. One another thing that stands out to me is just that game versus State. He was a man child. Just they were throwing the ball to him in the post. He was looking like Zach Randolph.
Stop
He
him.
was catching alley oops. He was in the high pick and roll, dropping dimes off to the point guard cutting. He's a hooper. And
Hmm.
I think 168 games under his belt. You put him in the NBA game with 10, 15, 12 minutes, he'll get you 6 and 4. He'll get you he'll get you some solid minutes. Um, Best case scenario, I think he could nudge out Isaiah Stewart in a couple of years. Middle of the road, more likely, he could replace Von Checchio. Now he's not a big shooter, but he has 62 career made threes. So 30% from three, which is not great, but it's not abysmal.
You can be better.
Something you can improve upon. And if you go and look, he pretty much didn't shoot a three until his last 2 years. So he has 51 made threes over the last 2 seasons and 9 before that.
Good
So I
jump.
think he's jumping improvement. Another guy, somebody we were very familiar with, and that's Danny Wolf. Now, Danny Wolf is interesting. I've seen mock drafts over the last week where he's going 14. I've seen him at 19. I've seen him all the way down at 39. That lets me know that some teams are probably really in love with him, and other teams probably don't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole. I think what we know we'll get with him is he's pretty solid at a lot. He's not great at anything, but he's pretty solid. He's a decent to be 7 foot-ish. He can
That sheet
handle the ball
stuffer.
pretty well. You said what?
That sheet stuffer. He can give you like
Yeah,
14, 9, 7, and like 3 blocks.
yeah, and pretty quietly too. Where I
Yeah.
would look up some games and I'm like, hey, I wish he was doing more. And you look up and he has a stat line like what you said. And then
Hmm.
what I would say nothing about him is he flashes in moments where he'll have a 3 or 4 minute stretch where he gives you like four or let's say 6 points, a couple assists in the block. You're like, damn, this dude is legit. And then another moment where he thinks he's a 6'8" point guard or six, he's dribbling the ball off his foot or he just can't get a handle on the ball. So I think there's enough there we can build with him on him. Now, like I said, we could be sitting there and laughing at this if he's a lottery pick, or we can look up and he's sitting there right in our lap and we maybe have a decision to make where
Yeah.
I do think he's an interesting player. Feel very confident that he can take Von Chekio's minutes. Um, and then the last guy we joked about it before we hopped on, and that's Hanson Yang. Hanson Yang is a name that I didn't know until maybe a month ago, 5 weeks ago. Seen him that he when the NBA Combine happened, they said that he was one of the biggest standouts. That's the first thing I read about him is who is Hanson Yang, or like he came out of nowhere. Little stats about him: he's 7 foot, 7'1", 265 pounds. In 53 career Chinese professional league games, he averaged 16, 10, 3 blocks, 3 assists. Um, and in the NBA Combine scrimmage, an NBA Combine scrimmage, where he played against some guys that we would recognize, all going to be drafted at some point. In 18 minutes, he had 11 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 1 block.
He hooping.
Yeah. And I call him the X factor because you never really know what you're going to get with these guys. When they come over, are they going to be, are they going to be Luca, or
Yeah.
are they going to be
Are they going to come over?
Dragon
Period.
Bender? Is it going to be?
Are they going to come over at all? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
also true. Also true. Yeah, I mean, we going to World War III. You can't even come over. You can't even go to... But I say all that to say, I think he's the X factor. Where just in literally, I watched 2 times. I watched the little 7. There's like a 4 minute clip and a 7 minute clip of him in the NBA Combine. Man, he's balling, bro. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He looks and you can tell the guys he's playing against are surprised that he's that skilled, that he's able to drop passes off. He's getting double teamed in the post and he spins out. It almost really looks like he lost the ball, but he dips it off to the guy who dunks. Like, kind of, he's a hooper. It was interesting to me. This guy, I think, is the most, if I could look up and say, damn, like we really drafted him and this could be a needle mover for us. Or like you said, he don't even come over here. I think it's one of
Yeah.
those where he could be a Segun like player, where Jokic, if you will, we're kind of a big guy that can handle the ball a little bit, shoot a little bit. But like you said, you never know really what you're getting. I couldn't tell you one other player that played in that Chinese league, but I know all this and he's 20 years old.
Yeah.
So
Those
I
numbers
really do
professionally,
like,
those are legit.
yeah, I really do like those numbers. And I think it can be one of those things where, you know, um, he just kind of goes under the radar. I mean, there's probably been what, 3 or 4 Chinese players all time that we could even name. So, I think
Mhm.
he obviously has a lot to go against them. But watching those numbers there and then seeing them, my first thing was, could he translate to NBA ball? And he looked really good against those players. So I still have that to say. I think that's a player that will probably be there, could be there. And I think we could be looking up mid-summer league saying, hey, we might have got a gem.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm looking. They have his projection. I mean, averaged double-double in professional environment. They're saying his floor could be Dwayne Dedman. I'm not entirely sure who that is, but they're saying best case scenario could be like a Nikola Vucevic or Alfred Sengun. So those,
yeah,
got those like those versatile bigs that could do everything, especially Sengun. We got to see him up close in person in the playoffs this year.
yeah.
Score
Sengun is,
first
that's kind of who I imagine I could see him looking like as far as like he's a big guy that's not a
and
brute.
pass.
Yeah,
Yeah,
can pass,
finesse.
pretty skilled with the ball. Yeah. So the little NBA draft net article I read had him compared to Marc Gasol and Vlade Divac. Said those are like top of the line
Yeah, they both
defense.
played 15 years in the league.
Yeah,
Marcus, yeah, great players, all
yeah,
NBA type players. I don't know if Divac was, but I know Marcus Gasol definitely big. A big that can handle the ball a little bit, play through them. Pick and roll, make the pass off the roll. Stuff like make the extra pass at the corner, whatever that looks like.
yeah.
I
Now,
like it. I'm with
just to
it.
hedge my bet a little bit, I am hype about him. Just to hedge my bet a little bit, athleticism is nowhere to be found.
Okay.
Uh, it's where's it at? Vertical. Yeah, the 30-inch vertical.
Oh wow. Okay.
Now I'm telling myself, I don't really know. I'm not that familiar with 7 footers and how much their vertical really is. I don't, but
Yeah.
I know that's on the lower end that you ever hear get mentioned.
Yeah.
So that little bit slow footwork. But I would say from watching the actual tape and not like cone drills, I didn't necessarily see that. But yeah. So those are my 3 or 4 players. I think overall we are in a very prime spot to just I don't say you can't go wrong because let's say this guy does turn into Segun, we're gonna be hurt if we pass on him. Or
Hmm.
let's say Lanier turns into whoever, we're gonna be hurt if we pass on him. But I don't think you can expect to make or break a championship in the second round here. But I think we, like you said, with the whole stepping back 1,000 feet, you go ahead and get like a Bobby Portis type. You sign everybody back that's a free agent. You throw in one of these young guys here into the mix. I think we're pushing towards that 50 win top four seed.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think his game, it just fits what the NBA is. I mean, I'm kind of scanning through some articles. They kind of talk about his athleticism, talk about how he might be picked on defense, but there's a lot of players get picked on defense in the league now, but
Yep.
their offensive game outweighs what they can do on the defensive side of the floor. He could be a guy that, catch a lob, can get, K can throw a little dump off to him, get into the rack, attracting multiple players. He can just finish at the rim. I even saw somebody in here kind of comparing him to Zach Edey a little bit, to where he's not like, he's not posting up and just going to get, his buckets. A lot of Edie's buckets the last, his last year was just catching it off, John Brand just dumping it off to him last second, or finishing at the rim off of like a missed layup or something along those lines. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it because I think if anything, when it comes to our players down low, we do got to get a little bit more versatile from an offensive
Yep.
standpoint. Just being able to have some guys that handle the ball a little bit better. Whether it's a player like him that can handle the ball better, or a guy, like I said, like Coltburn that can go out and hit the open three, occasionally to at least keep the defense honest. 'Cause I think that's just kind of the next step that we have to take as a team. More
Right.
shooting or just getting more versatile, at the five. So yeah, I like
Uh,
that.
Versatile. I agree with you. Versatile in general. Like not to hate on Duran because he's very solid, especially to be 21. But we're kind of in that like
We
we
got to
don't
see
really
something
have.
else.
Yeah, we don't really have a big brute. Like, we don't have a guy that's like, hey, like Duran is solid, but he ain't like a defensive anchor. And
Hmm.
he isn't a stretch five, and he isn't, it's kind of like we're stuck in the middle as far as if we can get somebody to offset what he can't do, that maximizes him as well.
Yeah.
If we could swap out him and bring in, I'm just throwing a name out there, but like a Drummond just for defensive moments and anchor, we would be that much better. If we could, and then Duran comes in and kind of runs the floor and does what he needs, or if we can swap in, let's say somebody like a Hanson Yang works out, and then it's like, okay, our whole offensive dynamic is just different when he's on the court. Um,
Hmm.
and so I agree with you. We just need to distill Trajan Langdon, just improve on the margins. And I think that's what he
Yep.
was saying, where we have the nucleus is here. Can we find a couple of little pieces to put in to make everybody better? Similar
Hmm.
to like we did last summer. We sat around last summer and we knew that we signed some good shooters. I think I completely overlooked the Beasley one. I bet you we go back and look, we probably didn't even mention Beasley.
Barely, barely, yeah.
You're
You
talking about
signed for 8
Hardaway, you're
million.
talking about Tobias Harris.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think we added, it was like, I forgot what the total was, but I think we added like 500 more made threes as our team for the season.
Yeah.
That now that's not always sustainable. Maybe that might cool off a little bit this year, but hopefully some other
400,
experience. I say,
415.
yeah, I say, like you said, improving on the margins is exactly what we're doing here. Um, and it's just kind of a great spot to be in. Like the books
For
are
sure.
clean. We love the coach. The players love the coach, and we got a future MVP in Cade. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if anything we can
plus
add,
5,500 for Cade to get MVP. I heard it last night.
what's the odds?
Plus 5,500.
Oh, hey,
That's not
I
the
think
worst
doing
bet.
it.
Yeah.
I think doing it the next couple of years. I mean, it's a participation trophy now, so no, they kind of just got to pass it around a little bit. But I
Yeah,
think he
he'll
will
have to
be.
go and finish like top three once and lose, and then they'll bring it back. And yeah,
Yeah, he might lose out to Anthony Edwards, something like that. Might lose out to Luca, but I do think he's going to be, if not the next American born, one of the two next American born MVPs.
yeah.
So,
And then last thing I'll say, we only got a minute left. Last thing I'll say is, um, I didn't mention this either, but Proctor's actually not American either. That's why I had two non-Americans, so we can take my overseas list.
going across the pond on us.
Yeah, no, I thought that was odd. He's from damn, I want to say Australia maybe or
Okay,
New
yeah,
Zealand or some random fucking yeah.
that
So
does sound about right. I think I did hear that on the broadcast.
yeah, I
So it
clicked
might
on
be
it and it had
that
like a
way.
weird. I was like, where is he from? Oh, I didn't realize. But
Yeah,
uh, an Australian named Tyrese. But we
yeah. Could be
in general,
need a move
I'm
too.
feeling good about it.
It's a good spot
No,
to be in, just as
I
far
think,
as
and
like,
I feel confident that of the eight players we named, one of them would be on there. I think we got some good. We dove into it deep, and I think we got some good prospects here. So, you got
yeah.
anything else for the people?
Oh, that's all I got. We back with y'all next week after we see who we draft, and we got summer league around the corner as well.
Yeah,
So,
always fun. And then football's heating up.
oh yeah, right around the
We
corner,
Lions
July
playing what 5 weeks?
31st.
Ain't that crazy?
Yeah, it's right there.
For sure, for
So
sure.